Welcome to another episode of the Make Mental Health Matter show. I am your host, Kelli Melissa Reinhart, and I am, as with almost every show, very excited for you to be here today. Oftentimes, we can, as humans, find ourselves in situations that we didn't really expect to be there. We travel throughout life, and whether it is something in our childhood, maybe a traumatic event, or maybe it's a living situation, or maybe it's a group of friends that really introduce us to different concepts, different things in life that ultimately lead us onto this path that maybe, we didn't assume that we were going to be a part of, or we get into certain things that, it wasn't the planned way or what we thought our lives were going to be shaped up into, but it happens. And I don't know about you, but I was born and raised in a faith that was very strict. And when I got older, I became much more rebellious, and I found a group of friends that introduced me to all sorts of things. And then it led me to make a change ultimately throughout my life that needed to happen. And I'm kind of using generals right now because I don't want to completely share my guest yet, because I will intro her. But there are things that happen throughout life, and sometimes people end up in jail. Sometimes people end up in the legal system. Sometimes they choose substances, and maybe it starts with prescription, maybe it leads into stronger, and then which ultimately leads into legal challenges, and they find themselves in jail or prison. And after you are going along this journey and you're in jail or prison, you're like, what do I do with my life now? And then there are opportunities that organizations or people come in and they decide, or help you decide, what the next chapter of your life is going to look like. And that's where my guest for today comes in. So let me intro her. So Ashley is a passionate advocate for the belief that individuals are more than their worst mistakes, and that every breakdown has the potential to become a breakthrough. As someone who has personally experienced the challenges of reentry after justice involvement due to mental health and substance misuse issues, she brings a deep understanding of the unique needs of the population and the transformative power of second chances. As the Director of Business and Development and Community Engagement at Breakthrough, Ashley is responsible for identifying growth opportunities through funding, building strategic partnerships, and driving the implementation of organizational objectives through development and community engagement initiatives. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up my guest. Ashley, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Kelli. It's really great to be here. I appreciate it.
Of course. So tell the audience, I know I did like a brief snippet of a little bit about what you do and your journey, but can you tell the audience a little bit more about your story?
Right. Yeah, of course. So much like you, I guess, I kind of grew up in, I wouldn't say like a strict home, but, I had access to opportunities. I had access to education. I had a support system. And, I went to private school when I was a kid. I got to go to college. And I never thought that I would ever end up in the criminal justice system. No one does, right? No one wakes up and is like, I want to go to prison, right? So it was definitely kind of a shift in the way I thought my life would go. But, I grew up in Florida. again, went to private schools, moved to Maryland in 1997, went to another private school, went to college at Towson University. And, I started working in a restaurant after I graduated with my undergrad degree. And if you've ever worked in a restaurant, you know that it can be an environment where there's a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs. And I kind of fell into that lifestyle, right? Working in a restaurant, drinking while you're on the job and drinking when you go out with your friends after. And ultimately, drugs became a part of my life as well. And I started to kind of get my life back on track. I started working in Washington, D.C. at an organization called the American Horse Council. And I was their administrative director. And it was my first big girl job, I felt like. But I kind of, I had a lot of mental health issues that I didn't really know how to talk to anyone about and didn't know how to ask for help about the things I was feeling. And so I kind of fell back into that pattern of drinking and using drugs and developed a really bad cocaine addiction. It's actually probably a miracle that I'm sitting here, because I would say at one point, at the height of my addiction, I was maybe doing an 8-ball of cocaine every day or every other day or so. It was really bad. And obviously it costs a lot of money to do drugs at the same time. So I found myself making very poor financial decisions, and it just snowballed out of control. And combined with my mental health issues of feelings of inadequacy, never feeling like I measured up to what, my parents wanted me to be in life, what I thought I had set out for my life to be, and just not knowing how to ask for help. It just snowballed out of control. And then one day it just all kind of hit a brick wall, and I, got caught and in making these poor financial decisions and ended up in federal prison. The irony of it all is that, I grew up in a home where my dad actually worked for a company that ran private prisons, right? So I had this idea, this belief that we see in the media too, right? And when I would hear my dad talk about this is the type of person that commits a crime. And when someone commits a crime, they deserve to be in prison, and they're not fit to live among society and they should be punished. And so I kind of had that belief, right? And then I found myself in the criminal justice system and navigating that journey. And it just completely flipped my, what I thought I knew about the criminal justice system and people who commit crimes and the reasons behind why they commit crimes. And, when I came home, I was released in June of 2020. I came back home, and I learned about this organization called Breakthrough. And I saw that you had opportunities to go in and volunteer and be a coach and a mentor to the men and women that they served in a couple of prisons here in Colorado. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to get involved with an organization and give back and help these men and women realize that they're more than their worst mistake, right? That, you don't have to be defined by this. So that was how I became involved with Breakthrough, which is now where I work, obviously, like you mentioned. So, but, I definitely had struggles along the way with my reentry. I still struggle with mental health issues, for not only from being in the system, but just, what the system tells you about yourself, and, trying to fight that narrative that I've, had drilled into my head over the last 5 years. I did 2 years in prison and then 3 years on supervised release. So it's kind of like a 5-year sentence, all said and done. But I'm sure we'll go into a little bit more in depth, but that's just a little bit of an overview.
Well, thank you for sharing. And I mean, I know when you and I first talked, and it's one of those that you're like, wow, you were in prison, right? And it's not something that obviously you would find yourself to be a part of, especially knowing the background about your dad and, the idea that you had around what people in there do, or the type of person that would be in jail or federal prison. And so at one point in time, I got a DUI, and I had the option to either be on house arrest or go to jail. And I was freaking out because I was like, oh my gosh, how did I get myself to this place? And I think it's the cycle of up leveling or just, not asking for help, possibly when you're experiencing the mental health challenge.
Mhm.
And you wouldn't assume that that's where you end up, right? But knowing that you did 2 years and then were able to do 3 years on probation, but it's still, like you said, it's a sentence that you wouldn't have ever imagined you would be
Yeah.
having to do.
Yeah. And I think the bravest thing someone can do is ask for help, right? But we're taught kind of, and I think women in particular really have a hard time asking for help because we're supposed to be like the providers of families. I do not have any kids, but my sister has 3 kids. And like, I see how she, has to be everything to everyone. She works full time to take care of 3 kids, like, find time to go to the gym and make food for everyone. And it's, women in particular, I think, have a hard time asking for help because we're taught that we have to be the providers for everyone. And I felt like that. I was married at the time when I had my addiction. And, I felt like, and he was going through some struggles with, he kept losing his job and like just, to no fault of his own. It was just, he worked for tech companies and we know how that cycle of tech companies can kind of be sometimes with employment. But so I felt like I had to step up and like be supportive of him and help him and like make him feel even more loved. And, then I combined again with the mental health issues of like not feeling good enough, like I wasn't doing a good enough job. It just kind of all spiraled out of control. And I think women, like I said, feel that really acutely. And then when women make mistakes and then find themselves in the criminal justice system, I think they're judged even more harshly because you're looked at and told like, you should have known better. Like you have 2 kids. How could you do this? Now you're going to be separated from them. Like I said, it's not like women wake up in the morning and we're like, yes, I want to commit a crime and go to prison and not see my kids for 3 years or 10 years or whatever their sentence ends up being. So I think, just women, like I said, the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. In fact, one of my very first jobs when I came home was working for a small digital marketing agency called Social Connects, who Gina Schreck, I think you know Gina. She is an amazing human being. And she, when she was interviewing me for the job, I told her about my situation because I wanted to be transparent. And I was living in a halfway house at the time. And, she just kind of looked at me and was like, we can all do hard things. I don't care about mistakes you've made in the past. I'm looking at you for who you are now sitting in front of me and like the value you can bring to this role you're applying for. And so I started working there, and for Christmas that year, she actually gave us all a book called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And I don't know if anyone has read that. If you've read it, it is one of the most incredible books I've ever read. And there is a line in it that says the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. And when Gina gave us that book, I opened the book and that's the quote that I opened up the book to. And I was like, okay, so I'm still very much on that learning journey of asking for help, especially when I feel like my mental health is struggling, if I'm having a bad day, because I am very tied personally to the work that Breakthrough does. So I feel, I feel a lot for the men and women that we serve and want to make sure that their mental health is getting taken care of, that their substance misuse issues are getting taken care of, that they're learning the skills that they can come home and be successful, and be reunited with their family and friends and not go back to prison.
Yeah, I mean, that's so my brain just went in so many different ways. But the question that's popping into my head, because I do often, okay, not often, but I'm curious about how the prisons are, other than Breakthrough, right? Such a unique program and organization that's really trying to get at this head on, right? But other than that, when you were in prison, was there anything that helped you as far as your mental health?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about prison is that I think you can approach it in a couple of different ways. You can either go in and kind of, I don't want to say like feel sorry for yourself, but that does happen, right? Like you get there and you're like, oh my God, like how could this be my life? And I'm just going to lay in bed and feel sad and not do anything. Or you can go in there and be like, no, I am changing the way I think. I'm changing my life. I'm going to break this cycle of incarceration because I don't want my kid to end up in prison as well. So that was kind of the approach I took. Like going to prison, I had to confront a lot of really not so nice things about myself and about how the way I thought about things. And so leading up to before I went to prison, I was actively working with a therapist, and he was wonderful. And I'll never forget, he asked me what I thought a narcissist was. And I like named off of a famous person that I felt like was a narcissist. And he was like, well, it's actually more than that. And he's like, and if I'm being transparent with you, like you sometimes demonstrate like narcissistic ways of thinking. And I was like, dang. Like, so like that was one of the first times I had to like confront something really not so great about myself, and then reconcile that with like the crimes I had committed, the people I had hurt, and how like all of my mental health issues like had led me to have like narcissistic ways of thinking about things. And so when I got to prison, one of the things that you do when you first get there is that you have like visits with each of the departments. So like you go to health, you go to the psychology department. And so I went to the psychology department, and they do like an evaluation on you. And I asked, I was like, is there an option for, mental health treatment, counseling? What does that look like? And the response was that only if you're like on active suicide watch do they provide any sort of mental health treatment for you, because there were only 2 psychologists for about 900 women in that prison. And I was like, well, no wonder like people struggle. And, sometimes in prison, it's easier for them to just give people medication, which there's nothing wrong with that. Like, but if you're still not addressing the root causes of what's causing someone to have the problems with the way they think and their mental health issues, like nothing's going to change for that person. So I was like, okay. So I went back up to the unit, and I was like, I have to change something. Like I'm going to have to do this on my own. And what's really kind of incredible about prison is that I met women when I was there who had similar journeys as me, who had not so similar journeys as me, but we still became really good friends. And I still talk to a lot of those women today, even after I've been released and they've been released, because that's a situation where, you need to have someone with you that's been through that same experience and knows what you're thinking and what you're feeling. And so I did a lot of talking when I was in prison to kind of help work through challenges I was having, like thinking patterns I was having, and how I would come home and change my life. I had a lot of books sent in that I could read. One of the best books someone sent to me was called Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. And it's written by, I forget if she's a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but she talks about her own journey with mental health and how she would regularly meet with a therapist after she would talk to her own clients. And she shared some of the stories of her clients. And it kind of just made me realize that everyone has trouble with their mental health sometimes. And it's about, again, how you can ask for help, how you have, what sort of support systems you have around you to help you process things and work through things, and just help you keep taking the steps forward that you need to take.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think that it's important to hear that there is some support, but not the greatest support. But I think that's really, truly like what Breakthrough is trying to help fill in those gaps. What we're going to do is go to our quick first sponsored break. But then once we get back, I had another question that popped into my head. So we'll be right back after this quick sponsored break.
Okay.
8 million people die by suicide in the world each year.
1 person dies due to suicide every 40 seconds. Have you ever felt completely alone?
like your life doesn't matter.
You are not alone. Call the National Suicide Lifeline at 988.
Hope and recovery is possible.
You can help too.
With only $19 a month, you help us save lives through mental health and suicide prevention education.
Scan the QR code or go to makementalhealthmatter.org to sign up as a warrior for mental health today.
Hi there, my name is Anjali Kapoor and I am the host of Take the Lead, a consciousness movement with Anjali Kapoor. Join us on E360 TV every Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern. Take the Lead, a consciousness movement with Anjali Kapoor.
Hi, I'm Ann Scotland, the host of Global Socialpreneurs. Join the experts, 12 p.m. EST on the Fresh Takes TV network for the best advice on social entrepreneurship. Join us here on E360 TV.
And like that, we're back. If you happen to be just joining us, thank you so much for watching the Make Mental Health Matter show. Ashley has been telling us about her journey through addiction and in prison, and then really now she's working with this organization that is really trying to fill in the gap of the mental health challenges that the legal system has, but helping provide a space for men and women to get the support that they need. And the question, so I guess I have a couple of different, but I'm thinking about like when you first went in and you said that it got to this point that you were doing a lot of cocaine at that point. Mm-hmm. And was there a process that you had to go through for detox? Like I've just heard so much around people getting thrown into jail or thrown into prison and they're like detoxing without the support. And I'm just curious, is that something that you experienced?
It was not. I actually got clean probably 6 months before. So like when I got caught at, making the poor financial decisions, that's when I was like, you have got to get it together. It was that point. And then I had actually been to the dentist maybe a couple months before. And when they took my blood pressure was so high, they sent me to the hospital because they thought I was going to stroke out. And I was like, okay, maybe I need to like do something about this. But, knowing again that I was like committing a crime, in addition to having this addiction problem, I couldn't really stop. So then when I got caught, and, was ultimately fired from my job, that's when I was like, okay, you have got to stop because this is not going to end well for you, physically, if you don't stop. And, honestly, I also felt like such a sense of relief when I got caught because I knew what I was doing was wrong the entire time. And there's not a day that goes by where I wish I couldn't go back and undo making that first decision that I did to hurt an organization that I deeply cared about that I was working at. But I can't do that. And so all I can do now is, try to make amends and do the best I can moving forward. So luckily I did not have to go through that detox phase, but I have, there were women that would come in that would have to go through that. And that's kind of where that community that I mentioned before that you build with the other women around you when you're in prison kind of comes into play, because women would come in and they would be detoxing, and other ladies in the unit would really help them try to get through that, bringing them water, bringing them food, helping them sleep. So yeah, because the reality is that, and, prisons are unfortunately very understaffed right now as well. So, they're going through their own challenges of their own with staffing. And so that's where that building that community on the inside is really important for, support with detoxing, support with mental health, support with, navigating conversations you have when you call home and they don't go very well, for example. So yeah, community on the inside is a really big part of, making it through prison, honestly.
Yeah, and I know so Alexis, who was one of my previous guests,
Mhm.
I know that you guys work together, and I think it's just that's a lot of what I heard from her too, is like the community. And although it's like, oh my gosh, I have this huge sentence or whatever it might be, it's just that I also had a community
Mhm.
that I could rely on, and you have to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what, and at Breakthrough, we like to say that we exist to transform the lives of incarcerated individuals here in Colorado, but also really critically shift that community perception of the incarcerated population. So we bring in volunteers actually at milestone events throughout our programming in the facility. And that really helps our participants on the inside start to build that community on the outside as well. And it helps them just really relearn like pro-social networking skills and empathy building. And we actually had an event last week at one of the facilities we work in, Colorado State Penitentiary, which is a level 5 maximum security men's prison. And one of the volunteers shared with me, we do this thing at the end of each event. We call it a yearbook page. So it's like a piece of paper and like you sign it like you would a yearbook. And one of the participants wrote to this volunteer, "Thank you for seeing me." And it just like, it brought tears to my eyes because, you know, maybe he woke up that morning and was like, "God, I feel like really down. Like maybe I don't want to do this today, but I'm going to go and I'm going to show up." And like our volunteer made such an impact on him that he felt seen. And that's all incarcerated individuals want, is to feel seen. I mean, any human being, right, just wants to feel seen. They want to feel heard. And that's what Breakthrough does, is we bring the community in to help our participants feel seen and heard, because everyone deserves to live a life that they want, you know, and we are here to help them do that.
Yeah, and that's so, I mean, obviously I'm in the mental health and suicide prevention space, but that's a lot of what we talk about too, is that community, the availability of people that surround you that are going to lift you up, not pull you down, but then also being seen, heard, understood, right? Like that, again, like you said, it translates across all humans, whether you've made a mistake in your life. And it's not that people who go to jail or go to prison, they're wake up and like, I'm gonna go to jail today, or I'm gonna go to prison today.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've found myself in those situations that I'm like, what in the heck did I just do? Why did it continue to escalate into, now I'm put in a position that I am, like, for me, right? It was like 2 years that I had to go through all the things that I did with my DUI. And I made a vow at that point. I even put a tattoo on my arm that's what I call my "Hey dumbass, don't do it again" tattoo. I like put the date and I'm like, don't do that again, because you went through that experience, which I also reflect, and I'm sure you're the same way, is that I reflect on what the experience I went through. And had I not gone through those, I wouldn't be the person that I am today.
Yeah. There's someone, a good friend of mine asked me, she was like, I forget what her exact language was, but basically like, do you regret like being sent to prison, basically? And I was like, honestly, no. Like, number one, I committed a crime. Like, I needed to be held accountable. Like, I deserve to be punished for it. I mean, that does beg the question, should anyone who commits a crime be punished for it the rest of their life, with collateral consequences and all that? But that's a whole other conversation. But it taught me a lot about myself. And like I said, it caused me to confront some really not so great things about the way I thought about the world, about how I was showing up and supporting people, or how I thought I was supporting people, how I was reacting to things around me. And I am a completely different person than I was 5 years ago, when I first went to prison. And I like the person much better than I am now. And, not to say, I still struggle. I still have bad days. But I'm only human still. But, experiences in life happen that teach us things. And we talk about, fail. It's okay to quote unquote fail. Because you learn from it. And obviously being sent to prison is a big failure in life, if you look at it that way. And so sometimes I hold myself to like a super high standard at work, for example, because I don't want to fail again, because I have this big failure in my life of being sent to prison. But by failing with things, that's the only way we learn. And so, I'll never forget too, my judge said on my sentencing day, she was like, you took advantage of your freedom. And like looking back, I'm like, yeah, I did. You're absolutely right. Like, and so the whole experience and the women I met along the way and now working with Breakthrough has just taught me so much like about myself and, what I needed to learn in order to keep working towards the best person that I want to be and show up authentically in the world too.
I love that. I do want to talk more about Breakthrough. We're going to go to a quick last sponsored break.
Perfect.
And once we get back, we'll talk a little bit more about what Breakthrough does specifically.
Cool.
1,917 people die daily from suicide globally.
I lost my middle sister, Kelli, to a completed suicide on February 20th, 2017.
How does Make Mental Health Matter save lives?
Number 1. Awareness.
My story, however, it isn't unique. I am a domestic violence survivor and a recovering addict. For 14 years, I was in active addiction. And because of Kelli and the work that she does and the opportunity to have my voice heard, I was able to stay clean and sober and have hit a year. I'm still here. And if it wasn't for Kelli answering my call the day that I thought I was going to take my life.
Number 2. Conversation.
I'm curious, and I know that I've heard a lot in the BIPOC community, it is very hush-hush. It's like one of those things that you don't talk about. Like you literally feel like it's not a conversation you can have. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
First, shout out to Kelli because I'm glad that she asked the question. I researched you before I went on your show and I saw how real and authentic you were. And I just appreciate the question because it is different and we have to have tough, courageous conversations. So yes, I always say I'm a triple diversity threat. I'm a Black woman with multiple disabilities. Now, I'm not really a threat, but to other people, I may be because people fear the unknown and what they're uncomfortable with.
Number 3. Education.
Kelli's passionate commitment to mental health awareness is a beautiful thing. It's clear in her social media posts, it's clear in the resources that she puts together, in the activities that she provides, her collaboration with organizations, and the consistent way that she continues to deliver a message, encouraging people to understand that they can share openly and to break the stigma around mental health. Kelli's topics cover children and adults, talk about things that we can do as a community, things that we can do individually, and her website is packed with information and resources and all kinds of contacts that you can use to reach out, whether you're dealing with something yourself or you're looking to help somebody else who is struggling. I encourage you to check it out.
Like that, we're back. So Ashley, I am curious because we talked about your story, which thank you again for just being honest, transparent, and really sharing that, you know, there were mental health challenges and you were really scared to ask for help or didn't know how to ask for help. You ultimately got into this place where you used substances and went to federal prison, and then also had that experience of finding the community and taking it towards, hey, I'm going to do something about this. I'm not just going to sit here and sulk and, you know, not and just take my sentence, but really also moving forward into this role with Breakthrough, which is an organization that helps fill in those gaps for those that have been incarcerated so that they have the community and the resources once they are released. So tell a little bit more specifically what Breakthrough does and what your role is there.
Yeah. Like I mentioned, we like to say we exist because we transform the lives of incarcerated individuals. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're based here in Denver, Colorado. We work inside 5 prisons inside the Colorado Department of Corrections. So we're in 4 men's prisons and 1 women's facility. Funny enough, there's only 2 women's facilities here in Colorado. The rest are men's. So we're in one of the ladies' facilities. Hopefully we will be getting into the second one sometime soon. But we really take a holistic approach to helping our participants come home and be successful. So engagement with Breakthrough obviously starts on the inside with our 32-week program called The Challenge. And the first 8 weeks are dedicated to durable soft skills. So, self-awareness, communication, resiliency, and it's an evidence-based curriculum. Some research had been done that looked at what sort of skill sets individuals had that helped them not only obtain employment, but maintain that employment. And they looked at people from, diverse backgrounds. And so the first 8 weeks of our curriculum follows that research that was done. Then the next 8 weeks is focused on career readiness and a little bit of reentry planning. So it's traditional career readiness. We help them with mock interviews, write their resumes, write their cover letters. We also have them craft what we call a breakthrough statement, which is a statement unique to that individual that helps them talk about their time they've been incarcerated. And I like to say it really helps them frame it in more of a positive light. So, acknowledging and taking, just taking the initiative to say, yes, I did this thing, but here's what I've done, classes I've taken, education I've undergone to help make my future better and brighter. And so I'm not going back. And then the final 16 weeks of the curriculum are focused on the entrepreneurial mindset. And it's not necessarily about having them come home and start a business, because the reality is that a lot of incarcerated individuals are released and they have about $100 to their name. So starting a business is really the last thing that they need to do. So it's about developing an owner's mindset and really thinking critically and thinking creatively, and ultimately helping them become an entrepreneur in whatever company they first find employment at when they come home. So that's our 32-week curriculum called The Challenge. And during those 32 weeks, we bring in volunteers at 4 milestone events. So there's our kickoff event, which is really kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's just a kickoff to the program. Volunteers come in and really network and engage with our participants that have expressed interest in applying to be part of the challenge. And then the second milestone event is mock interview day. So volunteers will come in, help our participants, with their cover letters, giving them feedback on their cover letter, their resume, even their breakthrough statement. They do a series of mock interviews with them for real world jobs that they have identified that they would want to apply for when they come home. And then at mock interview day, we also do this exercise called Step to the Line, where our participants line up on one side, our volunteers on another, and then our MC of the event will read off a series of statements. And if that statement applies to you, you step forward. So it can range from something as small as like, I like ice cream to I heard gunshots in my neighborhood growing up, or I've been incarcerated for 10 or more years. And so it really helps bridge that perceived us versus them gap, and helps our participants realize that we have volunteers come in that have been in similar situations. I know I always get looks when I step forward talking about how I've been incarcerated. We have other volunteers that come in that have spent time in prison as well. So, and then for our volunteers, it also really helps them understand that for some of our participants, I don't want to say it's not that they had a chance, but they just grew up in a very different world from some of our volunteers. They didn't have books maybe in their home growing up. They dropped out of high school, never finished high school. They had a parent who was incarcerated. Maybe they experienced some sort of traumatic event when they were a kid, and they coped with that traumatic event by turning to gangs or to drugs or things like that. So it really just helps bridge that gap. And, I think it's human nature to not want to be around something that you don't know a lot about. So like with that Step to the Line, we're helping we're helping get rid of that. We're helping get rid of those biases that kind of come along with learning that someone, has a felony on their record or is in prison right now, standing across from you. And then the third milestone event is Business Pitch Bootcamp. So as part of the entrepreneurial mindset of the portion, our participants do come up with business ideas, and the volunteers come in that day and really help the participants craft that business pitch to be the best it can be. And then the participants will pitch it. All of them will pitch their idea within 90 seconds. And the volunteers actually get to decide who the top 5 business ideas are to move on to the fourth and final round or milestone event, which is graduation and business pitch competition. So for the participants whose ideas were not chosen, they actually get divided up into those 5 winning teams and really help round out what that final business pitch will be. Probably pull on some of those soft skills, right? Like conflict, dealing with conflict, self-awareness, communication. And then the graduation event is really cool because the family members also get to come in. So it's really wonderful to see the family members, talking alongside not only their loved ones, but also seeing, helping them realize that the community is actively invested in seeing that their loved one, really shifts the trajectory of their life and is able to come home and be successful. So that's our 32-week curriculum. And then we like to say we have an inside out model of programs and services. So when someone comes home, we engage with them in lifetime care management services. So they'll come home, meet with our reentry specialist, Alexis, actually, and they will go through a welcome home meeting where we start to check off stability factors. So understanding what their transportation looks like, housing, employment opportunities, do they have access to food, do they have their personal identification, do they have mental health and substance misuse treatment that's mandated or that we can help them get into even if it's not mandated. So just working on addressing those stability factors that are really critical to ensuring someone has a successful reentry. And then they also get a reentry pack, which has a Chromebook, a Google Chromebook, a cell phone with 90 days of data, a $200 Visa gift card, gift cards to Goodwill or the Ark, whichever one is closest to them, to buy any clothing or other items they might need, as well as hygiene supplies. And then we can kind of customize the reentry pack too a little bit, depending on the unique needs of that individual. But, that digital literacy is obviously a critical part of when someone comes home, and the reality is in prisons that does lack a little bit because, we don't really necessarily, some people can't have access to the internet when they're incarcerated. And we respect that. And so we really start that digital literacy education when they come home at that welcome home meeting. We show them how to use their Chromebook and their cell phone because that's how they're going to find jobs, right? How they're going to look up the bus schedule if they need to take the bus, like how to use their phone to download Uber, to get an Uber if they need to get to work for or another meeting for something. So, and what's really unique, like I mentioned, we have lifetime care management services. It can be very common in the reentry world that someone is only eligible for care management upon reentry for a year or up to 3 years. Ours is for a lifetime. So someone could be released for 6 years. They contact us and say, hey, I'm really not happy at my job right now, or I'm moving back to the area. Can you help me find a place to live? And we will help them with whatever resource that they need. Right now we have about a little over 125 released graduates. So slowly increasing, which we love to see. And our recidivism rate stands at about 6%, which compared to the state average is significantly less. The state average hovers around 40%. So we know that what we do works, and we're very lucky to have a relationship with the Department of Corrections that is as supportive as it is in letting us come in and do this curriculum and bring volunteers in, and just, making sure that individuals are prepared to come home and be successful when they're ultimately released.
Wow. I mean, that's so huge. Like 40% and 6%, that is huge.
Yeah.
But also what you provide, I mean, that lifetime, that in itself is huge.
Yeah.
But then being able to navigate once you are released and making sure that they have what they need. Because I mean, if you think about somebody that maybe was incarcerated for years, right? 10, 20, 30, 40 possibly. And it's a whole different world when you get out. And then now you're having to navigate the technology of everything, because that's the way, everybody applies online now. Everything is online. The show is online, right? So it's having to re-navigate life in general. And I don't think that as society, maybe we do, maybe we don't, we just don't think about the after effects of when people are released, because people make mistakes and they find a way to make themselves better, and they don't want to go back again. Like you said, they want to be, they're humans. They want to be seen and heard and respected as a human, not as what their behavior was. And I know you and I could totally talk about all those aspects, because I think at least my personal opinion, especially with youth, because the brain's not fully developed and they go in really, really early. And then we're giving them a life sentence, and it's like, they're a completely different person. But that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah. It's like, we're all different people than when we were 19, 20 years old. Like, I look back at when I was 19 and 20 and I'm like, oh my God, like Ashley, like what were you doing? Like, we're all completely different people. And, that's why we take individuals in our in-facility programming with any sort of sentence length as well, which is also really unique. So we take individuals who have really long sentences or life sentences, because we feel like if that's their community on the inside. So if they want to make their life better for themselves on the inside and continue to challenge themselves and continue to grow, and then spread that around to other individuals, that are in their community there, whether it's other incarcerated individuals, the correctional staff that works there. We want to make sure that the correctional staff also has a safe environment to show up in and come to work at. So, because they're moms and dads and they have to come home at the end of the day as well. So, we're not going to prevent someone from continuing their personal and professional development just because they have a life sentence. And the reality is too, that life sentences can change. There's sentence reductions that happen all the time. Someone can have their sentence commuted, or they could be pardoned. They could be granted clemency. In fact, our programs and services manager, he's a justice impacted individual, and he had an effective life sentence, and now he works for us. So, there's any reentry should begin on day one when someone is incarcerated, no matter the length of their sentence, because you never know when you could be able to go home, whether it's in 2 years or it's in 15 years, or, you get that call saying you have an immediate release one day. So we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to grow and to learn and to thrive, no matter if it's in prison or if it's on the outside as well.
Amazing. And I know we're coming to the end, but I love the work that you're doing, especially through Breakthrough. And what is the place, if anybody wants to find out more or follow you, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah. Our website is timetobreakthrough.org, which you can see on the screen there. And then I encourage you to follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Time to Breakthrough, Facebook, LinkedIn, and then check out the events calendar on our website as well, because we do have some volunteer events coming up. We just expanded into our 5th facility. So that one of our new cohorts is kicking off actually next week. But we have we'll have their mock interview days and business pitch boot camps coming up. So really encourage individuals to consider volunteering. Also, people can reach out to me directly if they have questions about volunteering. Happy to meet anyone for coffee or to just chat on Zoom about what Breakthrough is, what we do, and then what volunteering looks like, or if they're interested in other ways of giving back. So
amazing. So those of you that are listening, it's timetobreakthrough.org. And I know I already told you, but I would love to be a part of that. However, I can help support you guys. And see, I would love to volunteer also.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
Well, Ashley, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for being my guest today. I so appreciate you bringing your story, your vulnerability, and willing to share what Breakthrough does.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, y'all. That was another amazing episode of Make Mental Health Matter. Again, we all make mistakes. We're human. That's life, right? And so we can't judge people, whatever they've been through. And I think that the Breakthrough program is just so beneficial for those that are incarcerated and those that are really getting out, and the lifetime support and being able to just have people be seen and heard and understood. And again, like Ashley said, there are volunteering opportunities. If you happen to be in the Colorado area, please reach out if that is something that you want to take advantage of. I know they're always looking for volunteers. And if you need support yourself, or you know somebody or have a loved one that may need this program, reach out. Again, they're not in every single jail or every single prison, but one day, that is the hope that they will be. No matter what you do, make sure you come back next week, because I have incredible guests that are just lining up. So I will see you all next week. Bye, y'all.